Hey guys, in this video I want to show you a very cool old school traditional flamenco form called the Zambra, which is this Arabic dance in drop D. It ends up being a really good exercise for our rhythm and our finger coordination. And what I want to do here is give you some of the essential riffs and melodic phrases for the Zambra so that you can expand on it and make it your own. Alright, so the Zambra is more of an old school thing, like you'll hear old artists like Sabikis and people like that doing it. I don't hear it too often with modern players, although I could be wrong. It's very often in drop D tuning, and what that allows us to do is to play the low D string, nice and fat, low sound, and then play a perfect fifth, which is the A string, back and forth. We can't do that if we were in standard tuning. We can't get a low note like the low E string to A would be a perfect fourth, and this is important because the D will be our tone center, and the A string will give us a very important perfect fifth. So we're just going root, fifth, root, fifth, and your thumb's going to keep doing that, and your thumb is going to kind of become our metronome that we follow. What's really great about drop D tuning is that chords that normally would look like this, like what we know as a power chord, now look like this, which we can get by just simply laying one finger over. So like hard rock and metal guitarists really take advantage of that fact. Like, you get these nice, easy to play, fat chords, really simple. Well, in the Zambra, we see that all the time, and there's all kinds of cool variations we can do on that. So let me start out by playing for you with a tablature on the screen, a very short and semi-easy version of a Zambra. It's going to give us this essential melodic phrase that I played at the beginning here, which is not too easy, but it's a great exercise for us, and I'll show you exactly how to do that after we watch it. Alright, so that was just the bare bones of the Zambra. A little bit hard here when we have our hammer-ons and pull-offs. So if you don't want to do that, or if you can't do that yet, I'll show you some ways that you can just kind of navigate around. And it's really something that we can play around with and lengthen and improvise on. But the beginning of this is very simple. We're playing those power chords. You can lay a single finger across these strings, any finger you want, or you can stack them up like this. What's happening here is basically the Andalusian cadence, it's called, or the flamenco cadence. Basically, we have a G chord and an F chord and an E flat down to a D, except there's no major third or minor third in there. They're power chords. We could also make them bigger by doing things like this, which we'll talk about later as we get more fancy with this. I just want to get you going on this main melodic theme, though, where we do this. Okay, so to get into that, we're going to start with our thumb playing on the 6th string and then the 5th string. And that is our metronome. That's our beat. Okay. These are quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next step is to match your middle finger with your thumb. So every time your thumb strikes a bass string, either one of those strings, your middle finger will play a free stroke on the 1st string. So I'm going to go like this. Just trying to squeeze those together every time your thumb plays. I'm doing rest strokes with my thumb. You could do free strokes, but I prefer rest strokes. And then, now that's easy enough. Now put your index finger in between every thumb stroke on the same string, the high E string. So we're going like this. That's really the main thing that's happening here. A little bit weird, tricky to get that coordinated at first. Okay, so we're playing 8th notes on the high E string, just going M, I, middle, index. Put your thumb in there. Okay. The way to get started on this is just to kind of play random notes on the 1st string. You just imagine that you're in the key of D minor or D harmonic minor, and you really can add any really notes that you want, actually. But I'm going to pick an A note here on the 5th fret. Any note will do. That could give you the sound of a D major chord or a D minor chord. So you can practice moving that around on one string. That's really fun to do. Okay, and once you have that down, then we're going to set up this position where your middle finger plays the 10th fret of the 1st string, and your index is going to play the 9th, and we're going to try to keep that index finger there as an anchor. So I'm going to be there from the very beginning like this. I'm going to take it off to get that 9th fret, which is a C sharp. Now your ring finger should play the 11th fret, which is a B flat note on the second string. And that's a little bit trickier. Now we have to cross strings, so that might be a little bit tricky. That's why I wanted to start on that first string. So we're going like this. 9th fret, ring finger on the 11th fret, and then we end up back on the 10th fret. This part's a little bit weird, just a little variation that you can leave out. But I'm going middle ring, like that. So again, that first phrase is this. Now as you repeat it, you can kind of swivel around here and let your ring finger play that first high D note instead of your middle finger, which is what we started with, and that just makes it less of an awkward jump, and so that note will ring out and it'll sound more smooth and more connected. So one more time. Swiveling around here, same phrase again, except this time we're just going to stay on that note. So you'll notice in some of these Zambra passages that whenever there's less going on in the melody, we can do this with our thumb and play 6, 5, 4, and then back to 5. It's a little bit too hard to do that when our other fingers are occupied playing those melody notes, and it's just a little bit of a variation, but it's exactly the same notes. The whole time we've been going D to A, right? This time we're going D to A to D an octave higher and then back to A, so it ends up being the same exact thing and just a more of an interesting thing happening there because it's easier to do it because nothing's happening but the thumb at that moment. So I did that at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now here comes the hard part, but it's such a great exercise for our left hand. What we're going to do is this. I'm going to leave the thumb out of it for now, but here's the melody. So what's happening here is we're hammering on the ring finger to the 11th fret after having played the 10th fret here. What you're going to want to do there is take your ring finger off, but leave it there. And that's such a great exercise for a number of reasons. Now, the reason that we should leave it down is because our finger doesn't want to do it, I think, mainly. And that just helps our finger independence. But it's going to make it ring out, and we're going to come right back to it anyway. And what happens here is your middle finger is going to go back to that 10th fret. See, now I have the ring finger, and I kept the index finger down on the 9th fret still. So we're going to pull this finger off, like that, and this finger is probably going to want to follow that downward motion, and it's going to block the first string, so you have to push against it just for the tiny moment of that pull off. And this is what makes it such a great finger independence exercise. Very difficult to do that. See, I'm leaving it down, and so when you really get it going fast, that's important because we can't just keep taking it off and putting it back over and over. So it should sound like this with the bass notes. So you can notice when I do that first hammer on, it still rings out and it has this very cool sound to it anyway, these notes coming from what we could say is the D harmonic minor scale. Now as you get better at that, you can start to add your pinky like this, and I'll show you more of this in a little bit. That adds a lot more complication to it, but still a great practice. And at that point, we're practicing every single one of our fingers in the left hand. And what we're going to do though is move all the way down here to the second position and just do the same thing that we just did. No pinky yet. Go back here and do it again. And then I end it on a D chord. When we end these, you could end it on a minor chord, a minor major 7th. Sounds great. On a minor 9th maybe. I really can't decide what sounds best, so every time I do one, I'll do a different one. Maybe D major like that. So that's your first step, is getting that pattern down, getting down that coordination. Now let's go back to the beginning and look at some other things that we could do for an intro. So we could just do these power chords. You can throw one of these in here on the 6th fret. And that's just a real interesting kind of sinister sounding beginning. Another thing we could do is just play around with these 3 strings and maybe some notes on this string. So I like to start it this way. See, when I play the 5th fret of the 5th string, we have 3 D notes in a row, and that has a really interesting drone sound to it. And the way that I might start it a lot is going and messing around with some of these notes. If you know how to do the technique called al sapua, we can do this kind of thing, which just sounds very cool. All I'm doing there is a rest stroke with a thumb. I'm doing a hammer on whatever the note is, and then I do an upstroke, and then I just do it again. And we end up rhythmically with the triplet when we do that, if we make them even. And And of course we can play those bass strings however we want there. So just think about these notes. We're going to play the open D string, the 4th string, play the 1st fret, play the 4th fret, that's F sharp, 5th fret, 7 and 8. And just think about just those notes and just mess around with those. So you don't have to do that fancy Altapua thing. It's very cool. Definitely a more hard thing to do, but you can just start it this way. Play a harmonics, kind of mess around with these notes. And then we can end up back on those 3 notes and even throw some of these in there and then get started that way. So this melody that we just learned, this thing, we can also do it down here in a different way just to set up the scene. So here's what you'll hear sometimes where we play these 2 notes. Now that's a D and an A again, so it's a lot of the same notes just repeating each other here. I'm playing 3rd fret and the 4th, the 3rd, the 1st. I might start it this way. Just on a single string. Then more string. What you do from there to get up to that high note is just kind of try to build momentum. We can speed up and slow down. That's very often what will happen in a Zambra. So we could do something like this. Let's do another pattern. Still got my thumb going on the 6th and the 5th string. What I'm doing now is just playing the D string in between. You can go thumb and index the whole time. Play those same notes we were just talking about. With my thumb and my index or my thumb and my middle finger. Whatever feels more comfortable. What I end up doing is just alternating those 2 things. These are the notes we were talking about, right? There's a C sharp on the 11th fret, taking us to D. Now we might be ready to dive into this melody. Now we can add to that melody and come up here to the 12th fret, then go to the 13th, then go to the 16th with your pinky, and then scoot up to the 17th fret. Let's see how that sounds. Come back. And I'm back where I started. Okay, this time let's add the pinky now. This is the hardest part. Right, so just like we were doing before, let me take the thumb out of it, do that hammer on, but I'm going to leave that ring finger, take this off, play the 1st string, pull off there, play the B string again, pinky, pull it off, and play the B string again. So you could practice this. Just a little snippet of it. You can really feel your fingers wanting to wiggle around there, but we got to keep them still. Meaning we got to keep them firmly on the string so the string doesn't move when we do those slurs. Now, sometimes at the end of those phrases, it keeps going and going and going. We can repeat it. The first thing that I played earlier where we had the tab on the screen only happened one time because I didn't want to go overboard with it. But when you hear this in a Zambra, it kind of repeats many, many times. And very often at the end of that repetition, it does this. There's a couple of extra middle finger pull-offs at the end, so watch. A way to kind of close it out. And then down here, same thing. And then from here, we can go back into this thing. Maybe get a little bit slower. End it on a D minor major 7th, D minor 9, D major. There's a lot of modal interchange type things happening in the Zambra and a lot of flamenco stuff where we're playing the D Phrygian dominant scale, the D harmonic minor scale, D major, and there's kind of these scales interposed on top of each other. So one thing we could do here is imagine if you're playing Malagueña. You know how we have an E note and we scoot up to an F and that happens over and over? Well, this is the same idea. Same kind of harmony can be happening here. We play a D chord, just scoot it up 1 fret. kind of the idea that we had down here. And one more thing about these power chords, like I was saying earlier, we can expand upon them and go like this. And that's a whole section right there that we could add to it. Or grab 2 strings with your middle and index. Really cool stuff. I like to do things like this with my thumb based on those same chords. Maybe a piccolo phrase at the end. So there's so much fun you can have with this. Of course, you need to know some of those scales, but it's really just, if you can think of those notes I was telling you, D, E flat, F sharp, G, A, B flat, C sharp, and then to D. There's many other notes that you could use as well. Those will do it, but of course you need to know where those are on the neck. So based on everything I talked about, let me play an intermediate version of a Zambra that I put together. That is your crash course in the Zambra. We got a few key phrases and riffs under our fingers, hopefully. Make sure your thumb is keeping that steady beat, and there's a lot of stuff here that we can really play around with and make our own and improvise with. And that's what's awesome about flamenco. We don't have to follow exactly what some composer wanted us to do. We can really stretch things out and have fun. And if you want to get all my tabs and all my courses, you can become a member of my Versatile Guitarist Academy, and also check out my free nylon string guitar technique workshop below this video.